are you a spiritual imposter? And a lot of people would say, well, what does that mean? What's a spiritual imposter? And realistically, it's really about, if you are a spiritual person, are you walking your talk? Are you literally taking the time to really be aware of what you're doing and what you spread in the world, and what you do, what you say, how you think, how you be? I mean, it's like we want to be the energy. And what happens is, if you really are being aware of how you are performing out into the world, you're truly a leader. You become what I call a spiritual leader. And when I say spiritual, spiritual has many definitions. And I've said this every week when we've had these gatherings, is that there is no set checklist of what spiritual being is. It doesn't mean you have to eat a certain way. It doesn't mean you have to dress a certain way, look or speak or talk, or those different types of things. What it really requires is just, are you being authentic, and are you spreading love, more love than you spread fear? And fear comes from anger, revenge, just all kinds of behaviors come out of fear. And so if we spend more time in fear than we do in love, then we are not really truly developing ourselves as a spiritual being. So let's talk about what the responsibility is of what I call being a spiritual leader. And when I say leader, I mean, you can just be a leader in your family. You could just be a leader in the workplace. You could be a leader just by being out in the world. I know people that they have they've developed what they believe they are spiritually, and then they sort of like have an energy about them. You could be anyone. You could work in a retail store. You could work in in a factory, in terms of how you are being toward others. And it's really a path of service. And that's what I call it. It's like, how do we serve others? First, how do we serve ourselves? Because we really do have to think about how we're taking care of us, how we serve ourselves. And then secondly, being a spiritual leader is about humility, authenticity, unwavering alignment between what you teach and what you do. So it's sort of like I talk about walking your talk. It's literally walking your talk. And let me say that even the most well-intentioned spiritual leaders are not perfect. I'm not perfect. I catch myself a lot, maybe slipping a little in terms of even my thought process in situations, or I find myself, being ready to, I need to respond to this, or I need to, I need to really think about this. If I see something sometimes even on social media, I'm like, why are they posting that? And I feel like, I need to respond. And then I think, do I really need to respond? What is driving me to do that? Why do I feel like that I have to respond to something that I don't necessarily agree with? And it goes back to what I've talked about the entire time of the series, is that we really are learning as a society of how to see the other side. Is that it's helpful for us to be willing. It doesn't mean we have to be there, but it does mean it's helpful to try to see the other side of situations. And what happens is that we don't want to become what I call a spiritual imposter. We don't want to claim that I'm this way and I'm that way and I'm this way. But then when you're out in the world, all of a sudden you're not that way. All of a sudden you're making someone else out to be wrong because you don't believe like they believe. And I've caught myself doing that too. I catch myself. So the first step to making sure that you're being authentic is to become aware of what you're saying, what you're doing, and what you're feeling. Because authenticity is thinking, doing, saying, being all the same energy. It's not saying one thing and then doing another. It'd be like even in my business here, if I were just being rude and obnoxious to my customers, or I was ignoring them, or I wasn't being compassionate or empathetic, well, I'd definitely be a spiritual imposter, because I'd be saying, look at this business. This business is all about, yes, taking care of people. And yet here I am being a totally different person. And so, I think the good thing is I feel like in the universe recently, a lot of people are getting outed when they're doing this, and the thing is, the other piece to this that I think is very hard for all of us, and I just had a conversation about that this morning. I do believe in grand plans. I do believe that there is a spiritual grand plan. And whatever's going on in the world that's a grand plan. And it may not be my plan, and it may not be a lot of people's plan. However, sometimes we have to step back and go, okay, I think I'll just trust in the grand plan. It may not look like I want it to look. It might even be horrific. It might even be horrible things that are happening around the world. But what could I do to serve others in my beliefs and help others? However, how can I step back and also allow the grand plan to unfold? Because we don't always know what the future holds. We don't always know what I believe and what the greater power of the world, or the greater power of the heavens, or the celestial world, we don't really know what that plan is. So, and also too, it's not someone who is a spiritual imposter. When I talk about that, it's not someone that's malicious. I really don't think they have a malicious intent. I believe they're just not aware of learning to walk their talk. And believe me, every day I catch myself thinking about, let me do this differently than what I'm doing now. And there's a lot of behaviors with a lot of spiritual people that even I begin to notice over the years, and again, I was judging. So let me step back and say that I was judging, because let's say I have a friend who is a big spiritual leader, and then that friend began to really impose their opinion and their viewpoints on social media, not in a way of just stating this is who I am, but in a way of almost bullying others that didn't believe the way that she believed. And I found myself judging that person. I found myself going, why are they doing that? I mean, are they really a spiritual person? And yet, I was looking at the facts, but I was judging. And finally I realized, you know what? I need to step back. I need to step back and just allow that. But if I ever have a chance to have a conversation with that person, I'm going to open up a conversation, not a debate, not a you're wrong and I'm right, or I'm right and you're wrong. But I want to open a conversation and ask, are you aware of your energy? Are you aware of the energy you were putting out? Because I do believe everyone has a right to speak freely, but it's how you do it. It's like being angry, and you can be appropriate or you can be inappropriate. And it's okay to be angry, but it's not okay to be inappropriate with your anger. And I've said many times to people, I'm angry right now, and I know that I feel this anger. However, let's talk about it. Rather than me just flying off the handle and ranting and raving and screaming and saying, okay, this is, and then I sort of miss the point of what's happening if I'm angry about something. Or maybe that anger really is a pain point within me. It's in other words, I'm not really angry at all. I'm in pain, and that's why I might be reacting, or someone might be reacting the way that they're reacting. So the point is, consider this. If a spiritual leader preaches love but secretly harbors resentment, let's say, or if like I said, a practitioner offers guidance on abundance while struggling in their own deep fears of lack, what message is truly being transmitted? So if you're really out there putting out a message about something that you're saying that you are creating, but you're not, you have to really look at yourself because, again, you want to be authentic. We have that saying, fake it till you make it. Well, it has a place. However, you don't want to continue to always fake it and never make it because at some point you have to be authentic. And I I know this may sound sort of strange, but I realized that when I started developing my business and my business began to grow and my business was becoming very successful, I found myself seeking others who were as successful, if not more successful than me, that I wanted to work with. And I know that I started actually interviewing coaches, that I wanted to have a coach. And I basically would say to that coach, have you achieved this amount of revenue in your business? Have you reached this number? Because if you haven't, then you're not the right person for me. Because I need someone who has also experienced the same type of business revenue that I've experienced. I wouldn't go hire someone who is struggling to make $1,000 a month. I would hire someone who says, yes, I'm authentic. I've actually done this, and I'm going to do more, and I'm going to teach others how to do that. It's sort of like hiring a financial advisor. A financial advisor wants to manage your millions, but they're not a millionaire. So it's kind of like, well, do you really know what it's like to have $1 million? Because if you did, you might manage the money differently. So it even goes down to this level of authenticity. And I know sometimes that's a hard concept to grasp, but we should be more picky, so to speak, about who we're working with, who we deal with, because sometimes those individuals may or may not be authentic. And again, that's their journey. But we also have to be aware, and we have to step into making decisions that bring us to the right people. And that's why I say there's a lot of, in my opinion, and again, I'm just stating a fact, there are a lot of spiritual leaders that are not aware of what they're saying or doing, and they're leading people in a direction that may or may not serve them. Now, is that my right to say that what they're doing is wrong? Not really. But can I observe? Can I make observations? Yes. And can I say, okay, that's not an area that I want to be in, or that's not an individual that I want to work with. It's okay, it's not working for me. However, I don't have a right to make a decision that those individuals that are working with that person, I don't have a right to tell them that that's not the right fit, because it might be. I mean, right now, our world is filled with cults. We have a lot of cults. And those individuals in those cults are seeking something that maybe they don't have. And we might look at that and go, oh, this is wrong. These people are being controlled. But the reality is that maybe that is supposed to happen. And can we make a difference in those kind of situations? Possibly. We can do that by just being who we are. We can do that by what you just heard in the meditation, that be the light. You are the light. And if you're a light, that light can attract others into your world, your life, or the fact that you can serve those individuals. So what happens if someone is what we call a spiritual imposter? And I'm going to use myself as an example, because I know that I've gone up and down in this area myself, but as I practice more presence and I practice more being aware of what I'm doing when I'm doing it and shifting that, it's amazing how I've been able to shift my awareness of just when I get up in the morning, how I'm going to go through my day. But the consequence sometimes is what happens is, first of all, people lose trust. They lose trust in an individual because all of a sudden they start to see things that are not consistent. They start to see that, well, this person claims to be a spiritual individual, but now I see them doing something that they're saying to others not to do. And we all know, we watch TV, we hear the radio, we're online. We see people that are supposed to be one way, and then we learn in the news there's another way. But again, we have to ask ourselves, is that the kind of person that, we want to follow? I mean, think of all the number of ministers that have been outed in terms of what they were preaching, what they were preaching against. And then it ended up that they were actually participating in that particular activity. And so we were all kind of like, wow. But again, I step back and I say, no one's perfect. We're not perfect. And we also have to learn how to forgive. Because I truly believe that anyone can change. If they want to change, they can. So what's the other thing that happens? If you're saying one thing and doing another, it's called energy contamination. And what happens is that you're contaminating others around you, not only yourself, but you're contaminating other people. And if you're aware of that, you can shift that. And what happens is when you're doing that, because you're saying one thing and doing another, it confuses people. It confuses people, it contaminates their energy. And again, it goes back to then they lose even more trust. And so it's imperative that we are aware of what we're doing every day. The other big piece to this is that it really interferes with your own personal alignment. And I did a presentation earlier in the month on commitment, about making commitments and how breaking your own personal commitments every day contaminates you and how it misaligns your energy. So if we make even little commitments, and I talked about the fact that, let's just say, somebody goes, okay, I'm going on a diet tomorrow. And so tomorrow comes and they don't go on it. They say, oh no, I'll go the next day. Every day they're breaking commitment to themselves. And the more commitments you break to yourself, the less valuable commitment becomes. And it can be little things. We break thousands of things probably in a week. Okay, I'll brush my teeth tonight. I didn't. Or I'll floss my teeth. I told my dentist I'd floss my teeth every day. And now I'm not doing it every day. I've broken that commitment. Or, just little things. I'll tell my kids I love them every day. And then let's say I don't do that every day. Well, we also have to look at why do we make commitments that we make, and how can we be aware of we make commitments sometimes that we can't really hold ourselves to. But we beat ourselves up, then we feel shamed, we feel guilty. And so it's important to be aware, and it's important to be aware of your own alignment and that alignment around commitment. And so the hard part to this, your soul knows when you're breaking your commitments, and your soul knows when you are out of alignment. But your conscious mind wants to help you make an excuse. The conscious mind goes, oh no, we have to take over. We can't let the soul lead this person. We have to let what's in the mind lead this person. And that's sometimes where you get into trouble. So as I said before, don't forget, the spiritual path is not about perfection, because we're already perfect. We truly are perfect human beings. It's our behaviors that get us into trouble sometimes. And when we are, is that we learn from our mistakes. I mean, I've learned more from my mistakes, even in business and even in life, than I've learned from, going to classes and being taught certain ways to do things. And actually, I have a philosophy now. I no longer believe in mistakes or failure because I see them as opportunities. So when something isn't going the way that I feel it should go, or I'm seeing that it's not moving in a direction, or it isn't working, then I say to myself, okay, this is an opportunity. If this isn't working, there's got to be another way that it will work, or maybe it just isn't something I need to do and I can try something else. But it is an opportunity. Or if we executed, let's say, a big program and the program just didn't work, well, then you look at that and say, okay, where's the opportunity around this? What is the opportunity? And if you can shift from believing I've made a mistake or I'm a failure or I didn't do this right, if you can shift those three areas into, wow, this is an opportunity, your whole energy field will shift. Talk about personal alignment, your personal alignment will begin to change immediately. And again, it goes back to what I talked about earlier, is that sometimes we have to sort of rise up like we're in an airplane. We have to look down at the earth and go, okay, there's a grand plan, and there's a grand plan for me too. And I'm just going to trust what's happening is the direction and the journey that I'm in. And if you can do that, even if you did it once a week when things aren't going well or things aren't happening the way that you want them to happen, if you can ask yourself, okay, I'm on a journey. Yeah, I'm on a journey. And I just need to trust because I know that spirit, my soul, greater power will bring me that next step. And I have to say, I'm living proof of this. I have literally experienced where I have stepped back and trusted 100% in some very difficult situations. And I finally just said, okay, I'm going to trust that this situation is that spirit will present to me the next step and the answer. And I've had that happen more than once, multiple times. But it is truly a task, a huge task, to step back and say, I trust. I trust this will work out. I trust that the universe already has the plan taken care of. And when you do that, you put an energy out into the world, and the universe starts creating the energy to bring that solution to you. And I've experienced that. I've said often that we talk about being in the flow, but we talk about it intellectually. But the reality is that until you've been in the flow, you don't really know what being in the flow feels like. And being in the flow is learning to trust 100%. Even in the face of you think this will never happen. This is never going to happen. And when you trust, Spirit brings it. So how do you avoid being what we call a spiritual imposter? And shift yourself into being an individual that truly serves others, and you're being yourself. And there's nothing wrong with saying sometimes, you know what? I realize that I said that or I did that, and I apologize, and I want to shift my behavior. And we can even do that in the middle of a conversation. If it's a debate or a heated conversation, you can stop in the middle of anything like that and say, you know what? I apologize right now. I'm not being very open, and I want to be open. I may not agree with everything, but I want to be open. Or I realize I'm exhibiting a behavior that is not consistent with who I am. I am, perhaps having a bad day, and it's okay because we have a bad day every now and then. So again, if we talk about how can we step back into being more of an authentic spiritual being, and again, that's based on what you want yourself to be. But first and foremost is that really practice what I call radical self-reflection. Radical, like really looking deep, asking yourself, how am I behaving every day? How do I treat others? Examine your actions. And also, too, ask yourself the question, what is it that you'd like to teach? What is it that you'd like to teach through your behavior or through your conversations to others? If that's even a desire. Ask yourself, are there areas where you're feeling hypocritical? Are there areas? Ask yourself that, am I being a hypocrite? Am I really being a hypocrite? And part of also developing yourself as a spiritual being is kind of doing some research every now and then and thinking about who are leaders that have truly made a difference in the world. And what did they do? What was their personality? How did they perform? So it's really important to dig deep. And then also, this is the other big piece. Are you letting your ego override your soul? And boy, ego can get us into trouble. Now, ego can help us out, but it can also get us into trouble. And sometimes, you've seen this when people start to become more and more famous and more and more famous and more and more famous, all of a sudden the ego kicks in. And they believe that they can do no wrong and they can do anything in the world that they want. And in a lot of cases, they have the ability to do that. But then the ego kicks in and the ego says, well, I don't need to be nice to people. I don't, you've heard of a lot of celebrities that everybody loves, but then when somebody has interacted with them on a personal level, they're very rude to them, or they're or it's not a good situation. And yes,
Because from what I understand, ego in and of itself, as the self, will exist, right? So as long as you have a body, you're going to have an ego.
yes.
So what you're talking about sounds, if I could be mistaken, it sounds more pride, more arrogance, lack of compassion for another self because you have money.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's great because that is what happens is that it shifts people. Pride, ego, money, I'm all powerful. And now I don't have to be this nice person anymore. I can do whatever I want. And yes, thank you. That is exactly what goes on. And unfortunately that happens to a lot of people. And it happens to a lot of people sometimes who, they came from nothing. And they have had these desires to create this great life, and they did. But then they also don't realize that it's also about maintaining that humility. And when you lose humility, that's when the ego really starts to kick in and really starts to mess things up. So, one of the ways to really work on uh, developing your spiritual self and to really reflecting what I call radical is, you can journal. You can journal like, how am I feeling and how would I like to be in the world? A lot of people, do meditate, and I even say sit in stillness. Sitting in stillness is different from meditating. It's just really being still and paying attention to what's going on. And I will say that I've been in situations where maybe it wasn't a good interaction, and I just had to sit in stillness after a while and go, okay, what happened there? And what could I do differently? Or what would my next step be? The next step in really becoming accountable as a spiritual person is to embrace accountability and to surround yourself with people who hold you accountable. So even like as an example, I mean, I'm here today, and as you are all sitting here, I'm giving you a presentation saying that this is the way that I want to hold myself. I have to hold myself accountable in this. I have to hold myself accountable to my customers. I have to hold myself accountable to my family. And so it is, again, important that we recognize to be accountable beings. And if you think about it, we do this, we want to do this out of love. We want to be accountable to people because we love them and we're coming from a place of love. And then another step is to stay rooted in humility. And we just talked about that. It's not about being above anyone. It's all about that we're all on the same journey. We're all really moving toward the same result in our life because we want to keep our heart open. We want to stay connected. We want to be empathetic. We want to be compassionate. And we want to be kind. And I know that the word kind was thrown around a lot for years, like, oh, be kind, be kind. And people were like buying people coffee or paying for somebody's meal. That's great, but just be kind to people when you talk to them. You don't necessarily have to go, buy someone their groceries, which is a nice thing. And that's a great thing. In fact, that happened The other day, someone was telling me a story about someone was, they were in the line behind someone and this person didn't have enough money. And the person said, no problem, no problem. Here, I'm giving you the money. And that was a very kind gesture. And we can do those things a lot, but also we have to remember being kind is just speaking kindly to people. Being kind is not getting angry when we don't get our way. And I know that there's been times where maybe I've been a little too harsh in my response when something didn't work out for me the way I thought it was going to work out. And, what was really going on is that the person I was talking to really wasn't the person that was causing the problem. It was perhaps higher up. And we have to remember sometimes, what as they say, don't shoot the messenger, because it is the messenger that really is not the one that's causing the problem. So we have to remember when we're interacting just in a normal way with a family member, with, while we're out in the world and things don't go right, is to learn to be kind. But also, it doesn't mean that you don't set boundaries. You don't stand your ground. But even in that, you want to be kind in how you do that. And then another step is to walk your talk daily. And that just goes back to what I was saying, is that when you get up in the morning, ask yourself, how am I going to be today? What's my day going to be like? You can set that yourself. You can actually say, oh, my day is going to be great. Yeah, I didn't get enough sleep last night. I'm a little tired. Maybe I even feel grumpy. But you know what? Forget that. I'm going to set my day today. I'm going to be in a good mood. I'm going to have a great day. Because you can actually do that. And there's nothing else that is pulling you not to have a good day. So that's something to think about every morning when you wake up. Ask yourself, how am I going to set my day for today? And it's just a question, and guess what? You're the only one that answers it. And then you don't let anyone else interfere with that. So, we've heard the saying, don't make others responsible for your feelings. You get up, you're feeling good, your spouse or your friend or your mate or your partner, and they're in a grumpy mood, and then you're like, what are you so grumpy about? And the next thing you know, you're feeling grumpy. And the reality is you don't have to make anyone else responsible for your feelings except for you, because you're the one that answers that question. The other big step is address what I call your shadows or your trauma, because a lot of people do have trauma, shadows, pain. They have a lot of things that are driving them to be a certain way. And therefore, they can't necessarily, or they think they can't be the spiritual person they want to be because they're in victim mode. And victim mode will keep anyone from truly being a spiritual leader or a person who spreads love and light. And so it takes a lot of courage to face trauma and to face what we call your shadow side. But in today's world, we have all kinds of opportunities. We have therapists. We have support groups. We have all kinds of opportunities. There's programs online. There's training programs. And so if you have something that's holding you back, then there's are no reasons why you couldn't step into some form of work to help you overcome something that's keeping you stuck. And then the other big piece to this is honor the ripple effect. Honor the fact that as others are more spiritual in their behavior, they're serving others, that creates a ripple effect. And you think about that, like, oh, today I'm in a good mood. I'm sending out the ripples of love. I'm sending out the ripple of prosperity. I'm going to send out, oh, I had a great day in my business yesterday. I'm going to send that ripple out to all other small businesses or all other individuals that are working on their prosperity or that are working on their abundance. And the ripple effect can be what I call a very sacred moment, because you can stop in that moment and go, I have the ability to send an energy out into the world, and that's going to just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And when you do that, you can be very proud of yourself, because it's such a simple gesture, but you're serving thousands of people. You're literally making an impact, probably millions, maybe more than that. But if you're thinking that and sending that, it's making an impact. And then the last step is really just reconnect to your source. Reconnect to what you believe is your most powerful source, whatever you deem that to be. And to also be what I call reverent about that, to truly honor, to be humble, and to know that we are part of the greater power. We're all one, and that, but yet that greater power has a bigger power for all of us. And it's, if we really think about where we are today, we have more power, more opportunity, more ability to communicate, more ability to connect with other people. We can connect to people all over the world. We can, we even have people up in space now, that are in spaceships that are living there for months at a time. And that's another connection, honestly, of communication. Not that we're not communicating, but we're beginning to send our energy throughout the entire galaxy. And it's really what I call this call for all of us to step into being more authentic and to be who we came here to be. But first and foremost, we want to make sure, who am I? Who am I? What am I? And who do I want to serve? And for me, that's what it's about. And for you, it may be different. But the reality is that if we all take the opportunity to really do this inventory on ourselves and think about where could we improve how we serve others, how we treat others, how we represent what we say we are, then we'll make this world a much better place. So let me just close with kind of an affirmation that I think would be helpful. I know it helps me, but the affirmation is, I am committed to walking my talk, living authentically, and embodying the teachings I share. May my words and actions align, and may I inspire others through my integrity and my truth. And I hope that that is something that all of you can take with you today and go out into the world and make a difference and be the authentic person that you choose to be.